Hey everyone, welcome back to the Listen Up Girl podcast, your go-to spot for LGBTQ plus news. I'm your host, Zach Randles-Friedman, and today we have a lot to unpack. From legal challenges around trans sports bans, to political maneuvering in Washington, to some truly wild moments, including The Onion potentially taking over Infowars. Yes, you heard that right, and more to come for that. Plus, international protests shaking up Eurovision, new legislation out of Florida targeting Pride and DEI, and a deeply disturbing criminal case out of the UK. So let's get into our first story where trans sports ban faces legal scrutiny. And before I get into this, I just wanted to say I am still traveling and not in my home studio, so if the sound is a little bit off or you're seeing this video is not the best, I will be back home in a few days, back in my studio doing my news. But back to our first story, trans sport ban faces legal scrutiny. We're starting with a developing story around an initiative aimed at banning transgender student athletes from school sports. Now here's the twist. The effort is facing serious legal challenges, not necessarily over the policy itself, but over how it even got this far. A lawsuit is claiming that thousands of signatures used to qualify the measure for the ballot may not be valid. We're talking about allegations that people signed more than once and hundreds of entries were missing key identity information. Altogether, up to 7,000 signatures are now being questioned. And here's why that matters. Ballot initiatives rely heavily on signature threshold. If enough of those signatures are thrown out, the entire measure could collapse before voters even get a say. This is another example of how battles over trans rights aren't just happening in legislation. They're playing out in legal systems, in election processes, and in public opinion all at once. This next story is The Onion with Infowars. So this one feels a little satire, but it's actually real. There's a potential licensing deal that would allow The Onion, yes, that fake news outlet, to take over the far-right conspiracy platform Infowars. And if that happens, the comedian Tim Herdecker is reportedly stepping in as creative director. His vision, turning Infowars into, and I quote, the premier source of trans comedy. Now, whether this deal actually goes through remains to be seen. But the idea of flipping one of the internet's most controversial platforms into something that is hysterical and possibly pro-LGBTQ+ is kind of wild. It also raises interesting questions. Can satire dismantle misinformation, or does it risk amplifying it? Either way, this is one to watch. And for those of you that don't know the backstory on Infowars, Alex Jones, who was a horrible person who had to file bankruptcy because of all his conspiracy theories, because he was sued so much, has to sell his brand, Infowars, and The Onion is going to buy it, and that's what's going to hopefully happen and go through. Next, Senate Democrats versus anti-trans legislation. Back in Washington, Senate Democrats have successfully blocked a voting bill tied to the orange convicted felon, the Save America Act, and after it was amended to include anti-trans provisions. But even though they stopped it, the situation is complicated. Behind the scenes, Democrats are reportedly divided on how vocal they should be when it comes to defending trans rights, especially with a major Senate control battle on the horizon. Some lawmakers want it to be an outspoken and proactive, and others are being more cautious politically. And according to reporting from the 19th, nearly a dozen senators were asked directly about Trump's focus on trans youth, particularly on sports and gender-affirming care, being inserted into a broader legislation. Many of them already opposed the bill, but the hesitation around messaging shows just how politically charged this issue has become. Now let's go over to Eurovision, where it is starting to be boycotted. Going international for a moment, Slovenia has announced it will not air Eurovision this year, instead choosing to broadcast a series of Palestine films and documentaries. This move is part of a broader protest over Israel's inclusion in the competition. Slovenia isn't alone. Ireland and Spain have also opted out of airing Eurovision, with Spain calling the contest neutrality possible to maintain in the current political climate. Even countries that are still broadcasting the show, like the Netherlands and Iceland, have declined to submit entries in protest. So while Eurovision is still happening, the political tension surrounding it is louder than ever. Now we go to Florida, where it targets Pride and DEI. So back in the U.S., Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a new bill that directly impacts Pride celebrations and diversity initiatives. The law prohibits local governments from funding or supporting DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That includes Pride events. Governor DeSantis framed DEI as an ideological construct, and he claims disadvantages certain groups, specifically white men. Oh, it's so hard to read this news sometimes. Critics, including leaders from the NAACP, have pushed back hard, calling the remarks out of touch and disconnected from reality. The broader impact here: local communities may lose funding and institutional support for events and programs that celebrate diversity, including LGBTQ plus spaces. Next, we go to Caitlyn Jenner reflects on transition. Caitlyn Jenner is opening up about her past, revealing that she originally planned to transition back in the 1980s, decades before she publicly came out in 2015. She says she even began hormone therapy at that time, but paused her transition after meeting Kris Jenner. According to Caitlyn, there was an agreement that she could express her gender identity while traveling, but not at home. It's a reminder of how different the cultural landscape was just a few decades ago, and how many people delayed living authentically because of societal pressure. I'm not sure how that would work, though. Like, Bruce Jenner, who is well known, could go out in public if he was traveling without Kris Jenner to be a transgender woman. I don't understand the whole story. I'd like to see the full interview, I think, but that's what I'm reporting today. I'll come back more later with better details. Our next story is GLAAD pushes back on media crackdown. GLAAD is speaking out against a proposal from the FCC chairman Brendan Carr that could limit transgender representation in children's television. GLAAD President Sarah Kate Ellis warned that this goes far beyond TV, calling it an attempt to reshape culture and restrict storytelling. And that's really the heart of representation. Isn't just about entertainment, it's about visibility, identity, and who gets to exist in public narratives. And our last story is UK conviction in a shocking HIV case. So finally, a deeply disturbing case out of the UK. A man that has convicted of intentionally transmitting HIV to multiple victims, including minors, and committing multiple counts of rape. The court described him as a calculating and predatory, targeting younger men over several years. He's now facing a life sentence with a minimum of 23 years. It's a horrific reminder of the importance of consent, accountability, and protecting vulnerable individuals, especially within marginalized communities. So that's a lot for one episode. From legal battles and political strategy to cultural protest and moments of accountability, these stories show just how complex and interconnected everything is right now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it, subscribe to Listen Up Girl on your favorite podcast platform, and please leave a review or a comment, because those reviews and comments help get the news out to more people. Thanks so much, and I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thank you so much for listening.